Welcome to the Natural History Cupboard. Come on in.
And welcome back to the Natural History Cupboard podcast, the place where the weird and wonderful parts of the natural world come together. I'm your host, Gareth, and with me, as always, is my co-host, Aaron. Aaron, say hi.
Hi.
Well, I was going to say, what have you been up to this week? But your week it went off the rails from day one, didn't it?
From day one, yeah. So last Monday, I came home from work. Everything was normal. And then I started to notice that my knee, I didn't necessarily feel any pain at first, but my knee had swollen up and it felt a bit weird. And then within an hour after realizing it, I was in a lot of discomfort, starting to progress to pain, and then before I know it, I was in the A&E. Yeah, 111 told me could be all these scary things, so I went to A&E terrified, or I went to the outpatients terrified. Outpatients told me it could be a couple more scary things. So I went and they sent me to A&E. So sat in A&E, with worry going through my mind. So if during my creature feature today or during my news, I'm a little bit muddled with my
You're all
talking.
drugged up.
I am on a lot of medicine at the moment to sort out, but luckily I'm on the mend, and also luckily this gives me a chance to shout out the NHS and what a great NHS we have, because I feel like they're caught in they're kind of, I don't know what the right term would be, but basically the last government that we had, the former government, 14 years of just basically abusing the NHS and not giving them the support that they need. And obviously eventually like that very quickly that has a knock-on effect for the service that they can provide. And the public, particularly the British public, are not the most forgiving in times of crisis. And so I feel like they've been thoroughly abused by an uncaring government for 14 years, and at the same time, the British public in general haven't had the most patience for them. And you wouldn't do if you're in these emergencies, and you're suffering from medical emergencies. You're not in your most patient state of mind.
No.
But I just want, if there's any NHS workers who listen, I would just want to say that the NHS does a great job. I'm very grateful that they were able to calm me down after I was panicking about all manner of things that 111 had told me, and or asked me questions about. And yeah, luckily it's just a knee infection. But yeah, a lot of medicine, a lot of pain. And not a lot of doing anything other than sitting on the sofa.
Well, whilst you've been lying around in a hospital bed and in a sofa and blah blah blah, I was panicking, going, "Oh God, I've got no episode to make."
Yes, I forgot all about this.
So I frantically started to come up with plans and all sorts of things.
You went full Batman.
Oh,
even the contingencies had a
I had contingencies, and then you got back to me and I was like, "Oh, thank goodness for that." I mean, I was also making sure that you're actually okay. I'm not that heartless. But so I'd started coming up with all these contingency plans, and we didn't need them in the end. So that's fine. I'd rather be prepared
Yeah,
than not.
yeah.
But I'd say, well, I'd definitely say I've had a better week. Mostly because I've not been, in hospital. So, but I am going to show you what I did manage to get up to at the end of the week, because myself and Drew and Jess, we all happened to work in the same college. We ended up going to a conference and picking up some reptiles, spiny-tailed iguana of all things.
That sounds
Very
cool.
pretty little thing.
I'm looking forward to seeing that.
But we also got to go and see some other things as well that they happen to have at this particular reptile center. So yeah, this is some some Aldabra tortoises that we got to go in with and see. And I was asked by Jess to do the pose there, the raptor pose. To be honest, those things move when they want to.
Yeah.
And they gave us some food to give them, and they just started plodding over. Now, interestingly enough, we sort of skipped out on part of the conference to go over to this reptile rescue center to just say, "Oh, we're coming to get a reptile from you later on. Um, just do you want the box now or whatever?" And in the process, we ended up going in with these. And we were supposed to be going on a tour later in the day to the rescue center, but the tour itself did not go in with those tortoises. So we ended up spending 20 minutes instead of sitting in what was kind of more of the boring end of the conference, playing with giant tortoises. So,
Well,
not sad that I missed out on that part of the conference because I got to play with an Aldabra tortoise. So
exactly.
yeah, um, that's definitely the highlight of the week, I'd say. That, and they had a snapping turtle, which I believe that we've talked about before, the one that was found in a lake in Cumbria, I think it was,
Mm.
called Fluffy, a little alligator snapping turtle.
Oh yeah.
And he was so dinky compared to the ones I used to work with years ago. I think you remember them, don't you?
Yeah, I
The
do.
big monster ones, my big Ripper and Godzilla, as they were called. Um, but yeah, it was. I was like, "Oh, can we have him as well and rescue that one?" As well. It was like being a kid in a candy shop. Like,
Yeah.
oh, I love that one and that one and that one. So yeah, it's been an interesting reptile-filled week.
Um, I have had a wildlife highlight of the week. There was one because I'm getting about the house on crutches mostly. Um, and I just was kind of waving off my partner at the door as she was off to work. And in my neighbour's garden on the feeder was a tree creeper.
That's
So
cool.
that was cool. I've never seen one around this area.
Yeah.
So
Well, there's not many trees around this bit
not
here,
really.
so yeah.
No.
Yeah. Ah, that's
Yeah, it
pretty
was very
cool.
cool that was.
Right, well, should we head into the news?
Yeah, let's do it.
Cool.
It's the news!
Right, well, we're into this week's news. Aaron, what do we got?
Every week, the weird and wonderful world of natural history offers up an embarrassment of riches when it comes to news and interesting stories. And though we here are a small team in the natural history cupboard, it's our aim to keep you guys up to date with the
Weird and wonderful parts of the natural world. I totally remembered that, and you've got it
Well
written in
done.
front of you.
Uh,
So let's jump into the headlines with me first.
yes,
Okay.
let's do it.
That's like, whoa.
Thank you.
It's all right. So my first one this week comes from Bird Guides again, which is proving to be a very useful site
Yeah, it's
for
been a good
lots
one,
of
isn't it?
really good information. And this is a fantastic project that is hoping to get off the ground. White storks being reintroduced into London, of all places.
Oh yeah.
Citizen Zoo, which is a environmental rewilding organization, has announced plans to release birds in the capital over the next year. They'll investigate the practical measures required to make London more suitable for storks, whilst increasing awareness of the species around the public and generating public support for potential future reintroductions to the region.
Nice.
That's brilliant. Although the biggest criticism I have is we want them here, not London. I'm just going to be jealous. I want them here.
Well, yeah, never know. They might spread as they do well.
It'll take too blooming long to get here.
So my one comes to us from Interest in Engineering, and the headline is one of the world's oldest dinosaur fossils revealed by heavy rains in Brazil. The state of Rio Grande do Sul, sorry, that's Portuguese, so that should be do Sul, in Brazil, has experienced heavy rains recently, eroding the landscapes and revealing a paleontological surprise: the unveiling of a near complete Herrerasaurid skeleton dating back 233 million years,
Nice.
representing a 2.5-meter carnivorous species that could, pending peer review, be the oldest dinosaur ever found.
Also, it'd strip Eoraptor for the title. Ah. Okay, well, my next one is also connected to, in fact, my next two are connected to that story in some way
Oh,
or
yeah.
another. So this one is about a dinosaur, and it comes from the Natural History Museum's Facebook page or the social media page. This morning, which was the 16th of July, we've unveiled our wonderful new Diplodocus called Fern
Ah,
to the world. Standing at 22 meters long and 4 meters high, Fern was named by the children in the local community after the plants that would grow around the dinosaur during its lifetime, and also what they've got planted around this lovely skeleton of a Diplodocus outside of the
very
Natural
well
History Museum
named.
in London. So it's basically there. You can go and see it in their sort of gardens on site. So they may no longer have Dippy, but they've got Fern.
Do you know if Dippy's ever going, like, if the end goal is that Dippy goes back to them?
I haven't got a clue, actually. I think there's a plan for a Dippy to go back. Personally, I prefer Dippy over the blue whale, but that's just me.
I do
Although
too, and
I
I do
also
like blue
think,
whales. It's just,
and how's this for an idea? Why not have Dippy on the floor and the whale up on the ceiling like they have,
yeah,
so you get an idea for scale.
yeah. I'd be keen for that. I think because of
Scale
the
of the
impact
whale.
that Dippy had. But more on that later.
Mm.
So next one from me comes to us from BBC, and I think you'll like this one. Near extinct crocodiles make comeback in Cambodia.
Crocodiles, love it.
A hatching record for the Siamese crocodile this century has been achieved as Cambodia welcomes 60 hatchlings
Oh,
into the world. The success comes after locals back in May spotted nests in areas the that are unpopulated by the species.
yeah.
How nice is that? Locals found a nest, locals reported the nest, and locals helped protect it. Because a collaboration between these locals, conservationists, local NGOs, and the Cambodian government saw the nest protected 24/7.
Hmm.
And now plans are underway to breed the babies in captivity before releasing them into the wild, a project that has seen 196 successfully released in previous years.
Nice.
Yeah,
That's really
really
good.
cool.
It's a bit like the ospreys from last week,
Mhm.
protecting the nest with community support.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So my final one comes from WCS Newsroom, which is one that I've not used before, and it's coffee producers capture rare Amazon weasel on video.
Oh, yes, I did see this one.
It's a funky looking little thing. So coffee producers took the video of the small mustelid species on the sort of edge of a growing coffee plantation, which, I mean, we could probably point out that that's doing quite a bit of damage to
Mm.
the environment, possibly why the weasel's been seen, because its habitat's possibly been destroyed. But that's for another discussion. The footage shows the first time that the Amazon weasel, Neogale africana, which you've got to love the fact that it's called Africana,
Africana
even though
in the
it's
Amazon.
in the Amazon,
Yeah.
has first been confirmed in Bolivia, around 900 kilometers from the nearest known range in Peru, and about 1,500 kilometers from the nearest known range in Brazil. So,
Mm.
told you they'd link to Brazil.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a funky looking little weasel, basically, that's poking its head out of a hole.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's really cool. So my last headline for the newsreel comes to us from fizz.org, and this one is right up my street, I think.
I thought you were going to say this is sad and depressing.
No, no, this is hilarious
Oh, good.
and uplifting, I find,
I like
in
that.
many ways. Because I believe that these bees that I'm going to talk about are just doing what a lot of us would do. So
Okay.
the headline is Japanese honeybees slap nest invading ants with their wings to knock them away. If you get a chance to find this and watch the video, you will not be you will not be disappointed. I don't think we can put it up because it's not
Yeah.
actually our article. But it's perfection. So environmental specialists from Japan's National Institute for Environmental Studies have found that sometimes ants deserve a spanking for their misdemeanors, and sometimes the ones who take it upon themselves to hand out said spankings are the honeybees. Um, Asian honeybees employ a number of defense behaviors in order to protect their nests, but sometimes a repeat offender just needs a damn good hiding. And these bees,
These ants are bees into bondage or like S&M or something.
these bees are ready for it, whatever it is. Picking up their pace to meet the would-be invaders, bees were observed leaning back and twisting in a tennis serve-like fashion, so like this. they'll win, right? Um, before proceeding to lay off the smack off down on the ants as hard as they possibly can. They do not go light, and as you will see if you watch this video, and I'm struggling with whether or not to say it because of spoilers, but no, screw it. This bee slaps the Goonies out of this ant, and it just flies, and they do it in slow motion. This ant kind of cartwheels through the air. It's very good. It's good viewing.
That sounds on a par with that study that showed that octopuses like to punch fish when they're bored.
Yeah, yes. But do you know what? This year, if I could say, because I tried to be a bit more active, but if I could say that there's a list of like the top 10 things I've seen on a screen this year,
That's
this
up
would
there.
be number 2 after House of the Dragon.
Wow, that's high praise for
This
House
is-
of the Dragon.
This is really good.
Fair enough. Well, there you go.
Yeah, so that's my final article, and that basically wraps up this week's natural history cupboard newsreel. My words are all over the place.
I'm not reading the rest of it for you. You've
Yeah.
got to do that.
Remember, guys, if you guys at home have news or topics of interest that you think we should cover here in the Natural History Cupboard, send them on in. You can send them through any of the normal channels, email, Facebook, any of the other social things, or you could tie your message to an ant and have a bee smack them and see if that lands in the cupboard. And it'll either be covered here in the newsreel or in the next part of our news segment, which is the main discussion, which is with this guy. And what is it?
Right, well, from the BBC, it's good news. I haven't done any
Whey!
bad news this week, so that's good. And it's a project that has highlighted the incredible power of nature to heal. Or, as we prefer to say in the cupboard, life finds a way. Insert obligatory Ian Malcolm meme here. In fact, we had one in the last episode. I wonder if we can get an Ian Malcolm meme into to every episode going forward. I don't know.
Hiding Ian Malcolm.
Yeah, it might work, it might not. So, what on earth am I talking about? Well, 3 female wisent have been released into the countryside near Canterbury in Kent in July of 2022. And they were, well, basically let loose into what is effectively a large reserve. It is fenced because licensing, and also because at the moment this is a very new reintroduction.
It's a
of the
trial as well,
species.
isn't it?
Yeah,
For sure.
yeah. But that's not all. That was 2022. Moving forward, to help restore the area and help graze out understory in amongst the forest, that was their main job, is to basically clear the forest, undergrowth, and make sure that it's not overtaken by 1 or 2 species, to allow for a mosaic of plants to colonize the forest floor and not have it as this darkened, deep dark forest sort of thing. Make it a bit more open, as they should be. But 2 years on, their numbers have doubled. And in fact, the animals are having a huge impact on the Blean and Thorndon woods, where they are basically set free roaming. The historic project between the Kent Wildlife Trust and the Wildwood Trust has basically been deemed a story of hope and success, that they hope that one day we'll see these brilliant bovines roaming in other areas in the UK, conserving in the cow way, I think. Grazing, basically. So yes, we've ended up now with more of them breeding, because following the introduction of the original trio, the project has since introduced a bull, and I'm fairly certain you can guess what happened when you have a bunch of cows and a bull. You end up with babies. So we had one born. I think we talked about this one in a previous episode on the news.
Yes.
When it was first born, although there was some slight controversy as to whether the first calf was actually technically impregnated. Sorry, the first cow was impregnated with the first calf before they even came there.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
even though it was born in the wild, it's not born as part of that project.
But they should still take some credit for that.
Definitely.
Because
it's healthy and it's doing what it needs to do.
Yeah, and if the zoos or the captive collections where these heifers have come from, if they'd mistreat them in any way during the getting them onto the
Yeah.
transit, then the calf would have been lost.
Yeah.
If the animal transit company had mistreated them in any way during that transport mission,
Yeah. We
it
probably
would have
wouldn't
been
have seen
lost.
it.
And then they've welcomed her there, and she's been calm enough that she hasn't lost it whilst in Kent, and she's been able to give birth. So it's a success all round, I think.
Yeah. Well, we've now seen the successful birth of a second calf. It's not been said whether the female that has given birth is the same one that gave birth last time, but presumably with only one bull in the herd, it's obviously that one is the father. So to aid these fluffy gardeners, the project has also released rare breed pigs into the forest as well, Exmoor ponies and longhorn cattle to basically, well, maintain the area. And they're monitoring this whole program, and basically identifying species that were there previously, not obviously the bison and the wisent and the cattle and everything. We're talking birds, invertebrates, plants, that sort of thing. And they're also looking at species that have now turned up since.
Okay.
And in the 2 years, they said the reserve is now teeming with life in areas that were once just pure darkness in the forests. And you get a feel of the sort of renewed energy of the woodland. Bison Ranger Hannah Mackins has said, and the reserve is basically coming back to life. So everywhere you look, there are success stories of nature's resilience, and from seeing dung beetle larvae in the feces, and monitoring programs as well, discovering species of insects that we thought were extinct in the local area. So it's basically transforming the landscape.
Which is what the point was.
Yeah. And it proves the whole thing works.
Yeah.
There are plans to connect this bison landscape by working with the RSPB and the Woodland Trust to create wildlife corridors across the Canterbury area of Kent, which is amazing. Basically meaning that we could end up with bison, rare breed pigs, basically crossing through these forests that you could potentially go and see as they transform the landscape. Work is underway as well, and this is one of the things that I've been looking forward to doing. Work is underway to install a giant bison bridge, which will allow people to walk on footpaths towering over the forest to basically view the animals at a
Yeah, that
distance,
sounds cool.
which I can imagine will be exceedingly popular with people wanting to see these animals. And as a side note, I'd like to point out, I mean, there's two side notes. First off, I want to see this happening on Exmoor and Dartmoor.
Yeah.
I want to see these animals here. Kent, you don't keep them. We want them. But as another side note, I'd like to point that when I was writing this up on my phone, you type the word wisent in on your phone, and it actually brings up the emoji of a bison.
That's it.
Yes.
That's
So
cool.
I'm going to actually say good job, Apple. And I don't often say that. But yeah, that's pretty amazing. That
Test this now.
you need to set yours is yours Android or Apple, is it?
Apple.
So type in wisent.
Wow.
Yeah, how cool's that? Someone's had
Nice.
a hand in that, which that's a very small thing that I can't imagine that a lot of people would have bothered to do. But
No.
yeah, so really good success story. I'm a bit annoyed that I was down in Kent this last weekend and didn't go and obviously see them, but I couldn't have obviously gone and seen them as easily. But maybe in the future we'll have to try and get down there.
I obviously can't go to a conference that has nothing to do with me, so
No.
so it's a good excuse for the two of us to do
a trip
combined-
down to Kent to go
yeah,
and
in
see
the
some
future
bison.
sometime.
Yeah, or
Yeah.
wisent, sorry. And that was the other minor thing I wanted to point out. The BBC article calls them bison every single step of the way. It doesn't even use the word European bison or wisent. It just calls them bison.
When it's details mattered.
Well, but yeah. So yeah, good success story, and hopefully more to come.
Yeah,
So
very good.
should we move on into our creature feature?
We could train our necks into
We've
it.
alluded a little bit as to what it's going to be about.
It's the creature feature.
Right, well, we're into this week's creature feature. Aaron, What are we looking at?
Well, today I thought we would go through an animal that is, I mean, is it obvious to say it's super popular? Because
Yeah, it's pretty popular.
I would say it was very much one of my favorites as a child. So much so that I actually I have very strong imagery of what this animal looked like back when I was a little kid, and
Okay.
how much it's changed to what we now imagine it as today.
Is it another mighty morphing species?
Yeah, well, perhaps not quite as much as like Spinosaurus, but it is one that has changed. Even if the changes are somewhat subtle in some ways, in other ways not so subtle. In fact, I've brought some props in to kind of go through some of this with you guys. I will be showing the books and bits and pieces, but I'll also stick some photos up so you can see it more clearly anyway.
Yeah.
But if I just shift my laptop for a second, and just so that you guys are aware of where we're going with this, and we pull wires out. It's great podcasting. So this is probably the oldest book I've got that features this animal.
Is a proper classic, this one.
It is. This has come to me through my mum or my dad. I'm not entirely sure which one, so mum can let me know. It's quite an old one though. So that's this one. It's the How and Why books. There's a series of them. I've got a few of them on prehistoric mammals, prehistoric man, and dinosaurs, obviously. And I mean, some of the imagery in this is
out of date,
fantastically old. Yeah. In terms of anatomy and such. However, one of the more intriguing ones that is very much out of date. I mean, let's just first, before I show you the page, let's just have a look at this page here with some of the dinosaurs on it.
No, I mean,
See,
I mean,
over
that's
on this side, obviously.
that's good, but I think you need to focus on the Allosaurus.
Ah, no, that was in this
Was
book,
it in the
wasn't
other
it?
book, or was it in this
It might
one?
have been in the other book, but I think
This-
no.
this-
It's here.
This is a case for dinosaur welfare, I think. There needs to be some help for this
Yeah,
particular dinosaur.
This is nightmare fodder. This is. So
I
this
love
is
bad dinosaur art.
a version of the Allosaur. That is scary.
It's a thing of beauty. He's stepping everywhere. He's
Yeah.
sort of
Gangly.
skinny. Yeah.
He's like the Grim Reaper of dinosaurs, that one. But the one that we're here to talk about today is actually Diplodocus. And this is very much an animal that didn't look like this when I was a kid. It was still incorrect when I was a kid, but it didn't look this incorrect. So here's Diplodocus right here.
The old 90-degree neck trick.
Yeah. Among other anatomical issues that we could point out. Anyway, so that's book number one. The other book I've kind of kept that one because it's a cool book nonetheless. But these two I've kept for my daughter specifically. So this one comes to us from the If Dinosaurs Came to Town book,
which I think I read as a kid. It seems familiar.
So here's the sauropod page. So yeah,
Very Flintstones.
you've got the Diplodocus here, the Brachiosaurus up there, and yeah, just again, I mean, we're little, like I say, it's out of date, but this is from when I was a kid. This is a much better kind of image.
color scheme wise as well. The two that you have there, the Diplodocus and the Brachiosaurus, always seem to be in those colors.
Yeah, very
Grey for the Diplodocus, green or brown for a Brachiosaurus.
Yes, and we're going to bring out one prop in particular in a minute that I've had since I was a kid. And again, Diplodocus grey. I had the Brachiosaurus version, and again,
And
it was
it's in
green.
green. Yeah, well, I think
Yeah.
it's something to do with those as well.
Well, it actually switches up a little bit here because we have this is the next one, and the next of the childhood props. So this one is the Giant Book of Dinosaurs, and this green one here is our Diplodocus. Now, me and Gareth were talking beforehand, and as we spoke, this is a lot bigger than a Diplodocus would be. But you get
a picture for you kind of have a nice
Length, at least.
length measurement, yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, like I say again, it's earthy color. But if you noticed, we were saying how Diplodocus is always grey and Brachiosaurus is always green. Well, in this one, he's green, and Brachiosaurus up here is like a greyish blue.
Oh, it's always gotta be one that
There's
bucks the bread.
there's always one. So yeah, that is that's what we're looking at today is Diplodocus. Now Diplodocus is one of those animals that has a bit of a fascinating history, shared history with humans. Not the same.
Wait a
not
minute
living and
now.
breathing
Wait
the
a
same
minute.
air, obviously. But certainly the discovery of Diplodocus and the events that unravel around it are very interesting. So we're going to start today's creature feature at the moment that this species first became known to us. So our shared history starts in 1877 at a quarry owned by Marshall P. Felch in a garden park near Canyon City, Colorado. Geologist Benjamin Mudge and paleontologist Samuel Wendell Williston are collecting several fossils that are to be sent to the Yale Peabody Museum. Now, who do you think works there around this time?
Well, it's either one of two.
Yeah, I thought you'd get.
It's going to be O.C. Marsh or oh God, I've got his Marsh and Cope.
That's it. Yeah, yeah.
It's either going to be Marsh or Cope.
Yeah, so you're quite right. It's only going to be one.
Or maybe
of those.
Lyle.
It's not Lyle. No, you were right with the first. In fact, the first person you named is the guy. Yeah,
So
O.C.
Marsh. Yeah.
So so named Diplodocus longus, meaning long double beam, in Neo-Latin as well. So
Long boy.
long boy. Yeah. The fossilized specimen is an incomplete example represented by two complete vertebrae, and also a few fragmentary vertebrae and a chevron, which is a chevron-shaped
Spine.
bone.
Yeah.
Basically. The naming of this species was carried out by none other than Othniel Charles Marsh, so O.C. Marsh, who Gareth mentioned just now, who in 1878 was locked in a rushed game of one-upmanship with Philadelphian rival by the name of, say it with me, Edward Drinker Cope. He didn't say it with me.
I didn't say it with because I forgot who he was again. I was like,
well, if you forgetting who he was, then I guess O.C. Marsh is the one who won the Bone Wars.
well, in my mind, I suppose it is.
As I say, these are the two main characters of the Bone Wars, and their modus operandi was essentially to collect as many fossils as possible of dinosaurs and name them as quick as possible.
Which is one of those things I've never got why there isn't a film about it.
It would
make a
good
really
film.
good sort of almost Western espionage, sort of Indiana Jones-esque sort of true story, basically.
1870s. That would be Western.
But it's during a lot of the frontier sort of
Yeah.
expansionism at that point. I mean, you know, Wyoming and Utah and that and all those sort of places were being, let's say, discovered. They'd already been discovered, but you know, they were being
pillaged.
Yeah, I was going to say civilized, but yeah, okay, pillaged.
Conquered.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's what's going on in North America at that time. In the following years, after its naming, several more complete specimens were actually discovered, throwing into doubt the validity of using the original as the species type specimen. But for the moment, YMP VP 1920, the original Diplodocus longus find, that's the kind of
Catalog
code name,
number.
catalog
Yeah.
number. Yeah, thank you. That's the catalog number that they assigned to this this original fossil. It would remain the type specimen and Diplodocus longus the type species. So if we fast forward a little bit, just a couple years to 1883, so we're 6 years after the first fragmentary specimen of the species was discovered, the first complete and articulated, or at least semi-articulated, Diplodocus skull was unearthed. And this is actually really important because there was never any skulls found with the originals, with the original fossils. And I think that's why there. We kind of talk about this later on, but I think that's why there isn't a Diplodocus skull assigned to Diplodocus longus.
Hmm.
There isn't one that they can say is definitely belonging to that animal because they just don't know. They never found one with it.
I mean, that's partly to do with sauropods being such large animals, but their skulls being so fragile.
Yeah. So by the end of the Bone Wars, the work of Marsh and Cope had inspired so many institutions, particularly on the eastern USA, to form their own fossil collection teams, and a wider competition begins to rise from the ashes of the Bone Wars. And it's between these teams. This was called the Second Dinosaur Rush, and the teams would find that the most fierce battle field on which they would compete was the race to assemble and mount the first complete sauropod specimen. And the major players involved were the American Museum of Natural History, the Carnegie, that is pronounced right?
Carnegie, yeah.
Carnegie, the Carnegie Museum of Natural History, and the Field Museum of Natural History. Each of these would send research teams out to the west in search of sauropod fossils. Now, Barnum Brown and Henry Osborn were the first to get some measure of success. In 1897, they successfully found a semi-articulated post-cranial fossilized skeleton of Diplodocus. They found it out in Como Bluff. Now, by post-cranial, that again means that
No skull.
the skull
Yeah.
was missing. So it doesn't really help any of our skull ownership questions, I suppose. Now, they shipped the skeleton back to the American Museum of Natural History, where it was described, albeit briefly, by Osborn himself 2 years after he'd recovered it. And it was both the first well-preserved specimen of Diplodocus and the first Diplodocus ever mounted. So a very important one there. However, despite Osborn assigning the specimen to Diplodocus longus, that original type specimen, it was later reclassified by, again, Schopp and his friends to Diplodocus halorum, which is a species described a little bit later on in time. Now, whilst Osborn was describing his specimen for the American Museum of Natural History, the Carnegie Museum of Natural History had uncovered something truly special. Their team had been searching the Morrison Formation, famous for all manner of some of the most popular and charismatic species that we know today. It was the Sheep Creek part in Wyoming, where Jacob L. Wortman and fellow crewmen collected a huge, well-preserved, I mean, it was big, well-preserved Diplodocus specimen. It shared its rocky grave with specimens of Stegosaurus, Brontosaurus, and Camarasaurus, but that wasn't its own neighbors in that time. We'll have a look at that in a minute. But a year later, that same spot would yield yet another Diplodocus, smaller this time, and with less bones preserved. However, those bones seem to be bones that weren't present, or they were missing from the larger specimen.
Yeah.
And so between the two of them, you could get a really good, or at least the paleontologists at the time would have had a really good idea of actually how this animal fit together and what those missing bones would have been. They could paint a much more complete picture of what was going on. So in 1901, John Bell Hatcher described both specimens, assigning them to a new species, Diplodocus carnegiei, but it wouldn't be mounted until 6 years later in 1907. And this is a really important Diplodocus. And it's at this point that I think we'll reach over and pull out the final prop.
Ta-da!
So this is essentially Dippy.
Yeah.
It even says it on his belly that he's the Diplodocus from Natural History Museum in London. And we're going to come on to why it's important.
Well, apart from being one of the greatest series of dinosaur toys that I think that's ever existed.
Well, you can hold Dippy for a bit.
Oh, can I?
Yeah. Don't let him bite you though. So yeah, when the Carnegie used other taxa to complete their mount, and this is the first reason why it's important, the skull that gives the shape to the head model that they gave the toy actually comes from a different but closely related diplodocid sauropod. So that is
Ah.
not a Diplodocus's head.
What is it? Barosaurus?
It wasn't actually. It was from Gallimiopus.
Gallimiopus.
Yeah.
Moping chicken.
But it's a diplodocid dinosaur. It's Gallimiopus pabsti, or pabsti.
Never heard of that one, but yeah.
Yeah, that's the one. That's the one where it comes from. So this is a Diplodocus's post-cranial anatomy.
Hang on. There you go.
Yeah.
Makes it easier.
And even then, it's not completely accurate. We'll get onto that in a minute. We'll talk a bit about what they look like now that we've got that one out in a second. So yeah, so that's the problem with the head of this animal. Now, despite this, it is this very specimen that became the most popular and well-known Diplodocus specimen around the entire globe, because before having a cast made out of it and then having those casts shipped around the entire world to different museums, the public gave this one a nickname, which I've already mentioned. This is Dippy. So it was the public, the visiting public of the Carnegie Museum that named the Diplodocus that I saw as a young child, that you would have seen.
Yeah.
As soon as you walk into the Natural History Museum in London.
Do you know what? That's
is-
so much better. It could have been Dinosaur McDinosaur face.
It could have been, yeah. So yeah. Now, do you know who ordered the cast? Who specifically wanted a cast of Dippy in London?
What year are we talking?
So I don't know the specific date. I just know it was early 1900s. So it must have been between 1901, when it was described, and let's go with 1930. It would have been before World War One.
Okay.
Sorry, World War Two. Excuse me.
Okay, that's a lot further forward than I was expecting. I'm gonna go with two guesses that would be at the base, like the back end or the beginning part of that. One would be Sir Richard Owen.
Okay.
The other one would be Queen Victoria. Don't know why.
You're
Queen Victoria
actually-
didn't technically make it into the 1900s, did she? I think she died 1899.
I can't remember.
I can't remember
Can't
either.
remember
My
when-
history is terrible. Go on then, put me out of my misery.
You're actually closer with Queen Victoria though,
All right.
because it was King Edward VII.
Ah,
Yeah, so King Edward VII ordered a cast of Dippy to be sent to London, and its mounting in London's Natural History Museum would mark the first mounting of a sauropod of any kind outside of the USA,
that's cool.
which is really cool. So yeah, there were other important Diplodocus fossils that were discovered, but in the following years. But to focus on them would take the entirety of this creature feature and then some. So we will move on. Now, due to how undeniably and grossly spoiled we are with Diplodocus fossils, they really are one of the most studied and arguably one of the better understood dinosaur animals out at present time. So I don't think it's worth wasting too much time on describing this fella for you. However, we will just take a quick moment to say something about him, because it's obviously a very long animal, and also we're holding up this prop. And it won't be a great way of showing this, but one of the things that we spoke about before is that whilst this is, if you ignore the skull and the face model, whilst this is a relatively accurate model of Diplodocus, as Gareth pointed out, his tail does drag on the floor, which is not how Diplodocus would have held his tail at all.
Also, their neck usually is held more straight out as well.
Yes, we will get onto the neck in a bit. It's not quite straight, but it's not kept up like this.
I mean,
It's
that's
a
not
little
terrible,
swan neck.
but
No.
you know.
But yeah, otherwise it looks essentially like this. Your standard sauropod, just a little bit more horizontal. Yeah, and we're talking about a total length of about 24-25 meters, aren't we?
Yeah.
For a big one. So yeah, I'll pass that back to Gareth, and we'll
I'll keep holding, although my hand's getting sore now.
You don't have to keep holding it up if you don't want to. But yeah, because of how spoilt we are with this animal, because of how much we know about them, it means we can feel a bit more secure about the inferences that paleontologists make about their life biology and their paleobiology. So we know that they lived in the late Jurassic, and that its neighbors, as I mentioned previously, would have included Stegosaurus and Camarasaurus, as well as Apatosaurus and Allosaurus, which is a predatory creature, as you probably could have told from the picture, the artwork at the start of the episode.
Well, yeah, for that one, yeah.
That is an incredibly gangly and vicious looking thing. And it probably wouldn't have bothered Diplodocus much. Maybe the youngsters, but other
Have you
than
never
that,
watched Walking with Dinosaurs?
I have watched that
That whole
great series.
that whole episode about Diplodocus, the little babies. You got
Yeah,
Ornitholestes chasing after them as tiny little things, and then Allosaurus hunting them down
that's
as
right.
adults. Yeah.
That's a good episode. Well, no, I take that back. That's a good series.
Mm.
I know I've ragged on. I haven't. All I said was, do we need it to come? Because they're doing a new version of it,
Yeah.
aren't they? And I just said, do we need that? Because
Yes. We do.
We got Prehistoric Planet now, and
More dinosaurs, always more dinosaurs.
yeah, as long as it's done like accurately, it's just that
Walking with Dinosaurs, it will be. It'll be
computer-
accurate for the time.
the computer graphics weren't
Well,
so
now
great.
they were good for the time.
They were all right, yeah. But yeah, other animals it would have shared its space and time with would be Dorsetta Kellys.
Mm.
So that's a
Turtle.
it's a turtle named after
Yeah.
Dorset.
Oh,
Hoploseuchus, which is a
little
crocodile,
crocodile. Yeah.
and pterosaurs like Harpactognathus and Mesodactylus.
Hmm.
Now, originally assumed to have been semi-aquatic, as you could see in the picture that I
Yeah.
showed you from the older book, where it had much more of a swan neck, and one of those two individuals in the picture was submerged up to the shoulder. They fought this because they thought it would support their mass better. However, the understanding of these animals as terrestrial beings has been agreed in consensus since the 70s.
Yeah.
So quite a long time. The fossil evidence appears to suggest that the pressure of water that would be that deep to submerge a Diplodocus up to its neck there would have been far too much to allow the animal to breathe just through those two nostrils that it breathes through.
Yeah.
So yeah, one of the reasons why they thought originally that they were aquatic was because the nostrils were on the top of the head.
Mm.
So they thought that, oh, that must be a little bit like a crocodile or
Just-
like simmering at the top, simmering, floating there at the top, poking out at the top. So yeah, it would have been too much pressure on the body for the lungs to be able to pull down the amount of air it would need just through the nostrils. So this led to obvious comparisons with giraffe being able to browse on vegetation at a level that avoids competition with all other browsers, and so Diplodocus would therefore be able to avoid competition with other sauropods at the time. However, we also now know that their neck didn't arch up like a giraffe's either. However, they do have an interesting way around it, we think. And it's an argued point, but we'll cover it in a bit. We also know a little about their activity patterns. So looking at the sclerical rings, which is part of the fossil that is missing on our Allosaurus, we could see comparisons with modern day birds. And these basically lead to the inference of a caphymeral lifestyle. Do you know what that means?
No.
Lions are a good example of this. So you have nocturnal, active during the night, diurnal, active during the day, crepuscular, active during dawn and dusk.
Yeah.
Caphymeral is basically random
Can't make their minds up.
random activity throughout the 24-hour day. No set time really, just waking up, do a bit of foraging, do a bit of your social behaviors, do a bit of drinking, go back to sleep,
Sounds
wake
like
up
a good
again a bit.
idea.
Yeah. So they have a lot of siestas.
Best way to do things.
Yeah. So yeah, these guys would have been active at irregular intervals throughout the day, basically. Now, they originally theorized that these animals had splayed out lizard-like legs that they
Oh, yeah.
lumbered around on. However, an animal of that size, with the legs being out at that angle, it would mean that their bellies are dragging on the floor, and there's no fossilized evidence of belly drag.
No, I mean you just have someone digging a ditch before each one.
Yeah, and
So they went on like tracks, you know.
that's right, yeah. So yeah, they thought that, and like I say, with the Brachiosaurus swan neck. But yeah, these would be later debunked. We now know through fossilized footprints that the animals walked with their legs beneath them, kind of like the columns of an ancient Greek temple, supporting the body weight from
Or an
underneath.
elephant.
Or an elephant, yeah, which would have been a more relevant example.
But no, they are called column legs.
Yeah, that's why I went down that route, but I should have thought about elephants. Especially as elephants has been a very recent creature feature.
Yeah.
So yeah, the neck positioning is not yet completely understood, and it remains a source of contention between differing schools of thought. The most sensible theory at present appears to be that the neck would not have been held high like the Brachiosaurus or a giraffe, because the length of the neck would have required an impossibly massive heart. I think something like 1.6 tons,
Yeesh.
like a tenth of the weight of the Diplodocus. But neither. I mean, that for the size of the animal, that's an impossibly huge heart.
Yeah.
So that wouldn't have worked. But at the same time, having it held level, as we were saying before, just completely flat out like that wouldn't have worked either, because the Diplodocus didn't have the arrangement that we would call in modern animals withers. You see it on horses. So there's a ligament and bone tendon arrangement that allows the animals to hold their neck out in such a way. So we're left thinking that it is held ever so slightly elevated above a flat horizontal line with the body. So yeah, this would also allow for the body size to heart size ratio that we have in real life. Now, even the teeth are preserved in such a way that give us a window into their lifestyle. And again, they're really unique among sauropods for this. They have long, thin teeth with elliptical cross section, and this ends with a blunt point, quite a triangular point too. And the combination of all these kind of characteristics are what is actually what makes it so so unique, because it shows it's not so much grinding that's going on. What's more, the pattern of wear on these teeth also betrays that it's not quite grinding that's going on.
They couldn't. That's what they had gastroliths for.
Exactly. So most of the wear and tear on the teeth is actually on the side of the teeth that is facing the cheek. So that's where the abrasion is going on. And this strongly suggests that this species was in fact chewing and unilaterally stripping tree bark. So what unilateral stripping means is that they had two different types of teeth sets, basically. And the first set, so would basically back here would guide the branch along, and the other teeth would be the teeth that it would strip against. Basically loosening up all those nutrients for them to chew on and send down to
gastroliths.
So yeah, very different to other sauropods in that respect. And they'd likely be stripping bark from Jurassic age tree ferns, though that wouldn't be the only flora around, as the environment would have also had Jurassic age conifers, ginkgos, horsetails, and many more types of plant around at that time. So what does Diplodocus mean to us today? Dippy, our I'll hold him for you.
So I got him.
You've rested. So Dippy, the casts of whom have been sent worldwide, was essentially an invitation from Andrew Carnegie to the rest of the world to unite under the banner of science, unite in with a love for investigation and paleontology, trying to get the whole world excited to be involved in science, which I think today is a more important message than perhaps ever. Because back at that time, these things, we didn't have the technology or the science to know exactly what we know about them today. And today, perhaps we don't have what we need to know even more about them that we could do in years to come, but we do have enough to not have the ignorance, the scientific illiteracy that we have around today,
I mean,
especially in mainstream politics.
that's why, I mean, in the news, the fern, that story's worked so well, is we've now got a version of Dippy back at the Natural History Museum in the form of one outside that you can see, which will
Yes.
grab people and bring them together. I've never thought of Diplodocus as being the sort of global banner that we should all be, uniting under for science.
Yeah,
But I like it.
Arguably, in that case, we've spoken many times about the importance of different fossils and what fossil we think is the most important one. I've said things like Archaeopteryx in the past. Some of you guys have come up with really brilliant ones. I don't ever remember anyone saying Diplodocus. And when you look at it in the light that it was intended to be, this gift to the world, to inspire us all to be more science minded, it's hard to argue against Diplodocus in hindsight. But there it is. He wanted us to be passionate about our planet's ancient past. And as a little kid looking up at the fossils of Dippy, just looking at this toy, I can remember looking at it. You can't help but feel inspired by that. And I'm sure that had an impact on me, and I'm sure it had an impact on you. But like many kids around the world, as I say, Dippy may well have been the first dinosaur I ever saw. First real one. I can remember when I was very young, a local zoo in North Devon had it's fair to say, because they don't have these models now. They were awful. They were like Victorian representations, cool for the time, and they blew my mind as a kid. But yeah, nowadays they've replaced them all. But you wouldn't have those around now. But I reckon Dippy's probably the first real dinosaur I ever saw. Dippy specifically.
For me, Camptosaurus and Allosaurus
Oh yeah.
at the Liverpool Museum.
Oh yeah.
The same ones are still there after all these years. And there's a Megalosaurus as well.
I'm trying to think back, and whilst the original memories of Dippy are blurry, I can vaguely picture visiting the Natural History Museum in London. I know I'm stood there with my mum. I can't quite remember if we've got my dad and my brother with us, but I know that I'm with my mum at some point looking at Dippy. I also remember seeing Dippy at school, which would have been I would have been a little bit older at that point, but I think if my memory's right. But I don't remember actually being there at school. I just know I was there and I saw him when I was at school. So yeah, oddly, I remember the St. Paul's Cathedral visit at school though. But there we go.
Fair enough.
There's actually a poem from a German satirical publication dating back to when Dippy was being shipped off, and I'd like to read it.
In the original German.
I am going to try, because I know we do have a couple of German. We do have some German listeners.
Goodbye, Germany. It's been fun having you here.
No, I'm going to try and do this respectfully. I used to study a little bit of German, but it will be super rusty. But we're going to try. So forgive me, but we'll see how far I go.
Let's see how this goes.
If it goes really bad, I'm going to stop.
Is this going to be a bit like the Osprey, where last week you were frantically looking for an image and I had to put no image found?
Oh,
is this going to be
yes?
Just we're going to have to go. If this works,
right.
You'll hear it in German. If it doesn't work, you'll hear it in English.
Oh, you'll hear it in both. If this goes well, you'll hear it in both. So the poem reads: Auch ein will alterer Herr noch muss den Wandelburschen spielen. Ist genannt Diplodocus und zahlt zu den Fossilen. Carnegie verpackt in Froh in riesengroße Arken und schickt als Geschenk in so an mehrere Monarchen. So that didn't go horrendously bad.
No. Any of our German listeners, give us a rating out of 10 how Aaron's done.
A rating, please. In English, that translates to, but even a much older gent sees itself forced to wander. He goes by the name Diplodocus, and belongs among the fossils Mr. Carnegie packs him joyfully into giant arks and sends him as gift to several monarchs.
Oh.
Yeah, it's quite a nice poem, I think. Yeah. So yeah, it even impacted the social subconscious at that time enough for poems to be written about. A tank was also named after the species, and also if you look at the French language, the word "le diplodocus," was that a good French accent?
Le
Le
Diplodocus.
diplodocus is to the French what the brontosaur is to the English, as a layman's term for just about any
Hey.
sauropod that can be spoken about. But it is, without a doubt, one of the first dinosaurs, certainly the first sauropod that kids learn about. It's also a dinosaur that often remains a favorite as those kids become adults. And it's one of those species that if you ask name 5 dinosaurs to any person in the street, no matter of how dinosaur literate they are, they would probably list Diplodocus in that 5. However, I would argue that it would have been in the top 3 before Jurassic Park came along, the original Jurassic Park, which I think is something of a sad irony.
I don't know. I think it wouldn't have made.
Do you reckon?
If you'd have asked me before pre-Jurassic Park, T-Rex, Triceratops, Stegosaurus.
I would have said T-Rex, Triceratops, Diplodocus.
Mm.
But it is a sad irony, as I say, because given the small number, the very few Jurassic species in the Jurassic franchise,
Well, yeah.
Diplodocus, the one that is no longer
Hang
as
on,
popular
it's not
because of
in.
it, is not in Jurassic
Yeah.
Park.
Oh, I thought that was the point. Yeah.
No, the point I'm saying is that it's a Jurassic animal.
And
It's
it's not
not
in
in
there.
Jurassic Park, but before Jurassic Park, I think it would have been it was a more popular animal than it is today.
It doesn't even feature in Crichton's original books.
No, it does not.
No.
No. But I think that's a good place to leave it, really. With Diplodocus, there's a lot that can be said about the animal.
Another one added to our Morrison Formation species list.
Yeah, it's one that I think I wouldn't mind if it was around today.
I mean, yeah, be pretty cool. I'd be happy with any
Yeah.
sauropod being around.
There's something about the sauropods, but particularly about Diplodocus, that has this graceful kind of look to it.
Right, well, shall we move into our emails for this week then?
We could Diplodocus on.
Oh dear. Terrible, terrible.
Bing! You've got mail. Ooh, it's an email.
Right, well, we're into this week's emails, and we're going to start things off as usual with last week's question, which was, what is the funniest species names you can think of? They can be common, binomial, as in scientific, or localized names, but not pet names. So, not what you call your dog.
Yeah.
First one that we had was from Connie Pope, Pinus SP, because I'm also a child. I think it's
Because it's
penis.
yeah. Then Matt Jack Dupe commented, "Crikey, Steve Irwin I."
That's a good one. Yeah. Jen Babs, Turdus Maximus, and Turdus Bergeranus, because I too am a child.
James Gotts has said Rubus Cockburnius, because I'm a
It's
child.
actually Rubus Cockburnianus.
Oh, it is. Yeah. Okay. So Rubus Cockburnianus, because I'm a child. To which Steve Trim responded that he had to look that one up.
It's a plant.
Yeah.
It's type of Rubus is the same family that blackberries and everything are in.
That's right. Yeah.
So yeah, quite easy to come across. Although probably don't want Cockburnianus growing in your garden because it will take over. So Southern Poodoo's scientific name is Poodoo.
Yeah.
That's from Spencer Seams, of which we've then replied, whenever I can hear someone talk about a poodoo, I can't help but think of Sebulba crashing his pod racer. And that's exactly what I think of as well, Aaron. And it's a very apt.
Oh no.
Very apt. Yeah.
And then Louisa Leary has said she's always liked the repeats, like bison, poodoo, binomial nomenclature.
And then I've replied to that
You've
one, but
replied to that one,
you
haven't
read
you?
it
Yeah.
out.
So Gareth has then replied, "That's called a tautonym, where it repeats. I always thought it's good, but lazy from the people who name them."
It is.
Shots fired.
I think it is. I think it is.
I didn't realise I replied to that one as well. It says
And it gets worse.
It gets worse. Gorilla, gorilla, gorilla.
Exactly. Phil Barber has put Cock of the Rock, Sparkle Muffin, Jumping Spider, and Boxy if Gareth remembers. Boxy. So there's a story behind Boxy,
Yes.
of which I'll go into in a second. But we've replied back to him saying that we did give a shout out to the Sparkle Muffin on the episode, and I'm pretty sure Gareth does recall Boxy. Yes, I do.
Yeah.
And the team would love to catch up with you, Phil. I'm sure we will.
Yeah.
So Boxy was essentially a cardboard box that was turned into our sort of. This is going to sound incredibly odd. At a conference, I've been to many, many conferences. It's one of those weird zoo things, where we were asked to produce for BIAZA, the British and Irish Association of Zoos and Aquariums, a sort of range of videos on the importance of biosecurity. And we all paired off into our groups and did different parts to this particular one. We chose to talk about like making sure that you're wearing gloves and everything when dealing with species. And we had Boxy, who was basically a small box with some eyes and a silly face drawn on him, put into a little tank. And Phil was the keeper. I was the narrator, and did it in sort of a "Hello, this is the BBC" sort of voice. Have you touched an animal that should have, that sort of thing. And at the end, Phil ends up keeling over and dying, and Boxy ends up dying as well. So don't know what happened to that video. It's possibly out there. If you can find it, send it in to us. I'd love to see that. But yes, I do remember Boxy.
So Spencer Seams comes at us with the next one, and his one is Vampirichutus infernales, aka the vampire squid. Literal translation is vampire squid from hell. He's also attached a photo there for reference. And Gareth, I think it's you replied to that one.
Yeah, I think I may have got in there first and then you replied after, but yeah.
You said that they're certainly cool looking, to which I responded, "Are you aware that a new species has been named? It's been named Vampiroteuthis pseudo-infernales."
So fake hell.
Yeah. And that was discovered back in 2016, but described this year, I think it was. Yeah.
Aaron Gibb has put sarcastic fringe head. I love the sarcastic fringe head. It only sounds great. Sorry, it not only sounds great, but it looks awesome as well. And that's a species I would highly recommend anyone going and looking up, especially a video of it, then displaying to other sarcastic fringe heads. But when I asked students a while back to draw a sarcastic fringe head, not telling them what the animal was, just said, draw for me a sarcastic fringe head. A good number of them all had like an animal that had a long fringe. But yeah. So yeah, that was last week's question. This week's question for you, based on what we were talking about in Aaron's creature feature, is what was the first dinosaur skeleton you remember seeing as a kid? It may have been one that you, completely forgot until you went back to a museum that you hadn't been to as a child or something like that. Or it may have been something that really didn't, that really sort of stuck with you from a specific place. And I think we'd even open this up to not complete skeletons either.
Yeah.
But yes, obviously for myself, it was an Allosaurus and a Camptosaurus, not full size, I'd like to point out, at the Liverpool Museum, and a Megalosaurus that they have there, which is full sized.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that Dippy was the first dinosaur I ever saw.
Yeah.
First fossil dinosaur, yeah.
Well, let us know what the first dinosaur skeleton you ever saw was. You can do that on our Facebook page or send it in on any other means that you wish to let us know. There are multiple ways to get in contact with us. One of them is one of the ways that Erin is going to tell us about now, which is our Patreon.
Yeah, that's right. So every week we like to give a little love back by shouting out the names of our wonderful Patreon supporters. Now, these are our cupboard dwellers who have helped us via financial contributions committed to us.
And their names are as follows: it's Fogtober, Jen Greenhall, Connie P, Chelsea McKee, Nick to Nick, and Justin Knife. Guys, your financial help is actively aiding us in improving the content here. It's allowing us to go out and do things. It's allowing us to kind of build this up, although it's been a bit slow to change recently, really.
Some good stuff.
But it's it really, we cannot thank you enough, and we are grateful beyond words. Now, we appreciate that. Well, we appreciate all of our cupboard dwellers and what you guys do for us. But if you are thinking that we earn it and you are interested in our Patreon support, there are currently 2 tiers through which you can help us, and that's the Animal Ambassadors and the Nature Nerds, and more on those at a later date. But yeah, it's just to say thank you very much.
So yes, a big thank you to all of our Patreons. And just remember that money isn't everything, but there are ways that you can help us out in a variety of other means, by liking, subscribing, contacting us with a question, which we've had a lot of really good questions the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, we got a
And,
few comments and questions lately
yeah.
that we're catching up on. So
Yeah.
if you haven't heard them answered yet, we are getting to them.
And you can like, subscribe, all of those different things on whatever social media you're following us on. You can also like us on YouTube or whatever podcasting service you are listening to us on, because our YouTube numbers are growing very, very slowly, but they're growing. We're even getting comments on the YouTube channels. You can also get in contact with us at our email address, which is thenathistorykcupboard@gmail.com. But yes, let's bring up one of those comments from the YouTube page, shall we?
Yes. So this is we try and respond to all the people that comment to us. On Facebook we can be a bit lax, but we are getting better.
I'm getting better at that. Yeah.
But on YouTube we're a bit more on it. I think, at least I've been responding to people on that a lot. So yeah, we do try. Even if you just say hi guys, we will respond. Okay. But this person is I'm not familiar with the username. It says user GE5. Well, it's a code username. But they say, "Hi guys, the Natural History Cupboard has become my favorite Sunday morning ritual. Thanks for all you do." Which is just a very lovely
nice thing to hear.
So thank you very much. I'm glad we're glad that you're enjoying the content. And hope that you continue to do so.
That's really good.
Yeah, it's a nice little comment, that one.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that pretty much brings us to the end of this week's episode.
It does.
A big thank you, Aaron.
You're very welcome. Sorry if it's been a bit
I mean, you're here.
Yeah.
That's the main thing, you know.
Yeah. Next week my mind will be hopefully a little bit clearer, a little bit less cloudy and tired, and yeah.
Go to sleep.
Pain.
And a big thank you to you at home for listening. And we'll see you next time here in the Natural History Cupboard. Bye.
Bye. One does not simply find a fossilized skull of a sauropod.